Welcome to the Kindness Effect, where small moments open hearts and change lives, starting with ours. Now, your host, Jim Ellis.
Hello, friends. I'm Jim Ellis, and this is The Kindness Effect, a podcast about the small choices that can change a moment, a relationship, and sometimes an entire community. Because kindness rarely stops with one person. It creates a ripple. If these conversations encourage you, please follow The Kindness Effect on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you can find podcasts. Like this episode and share it with someone who may need today's message. Every follow, like, and share helps this ripple of kindness reach another person. Let me begin with a question. Have you ever forgiven someone and then wondered why you were still hurt? I have. I wish forgiveness worked like pressing the Staples easy button. You make the noble choice, the resentment disappears, peaceful music begins playing, the angels appear, and suddenly you are the calmest person in the grocery store checkout line. That has not been my experience. Forgiveness is usually less like pressing a button and more like carrying a heavy backpack while deciding one item at a time what you are finally ready to take out. Now, several years ago, I was working on a theater production with someone I trusted. We had spent weeks preparing. There were schedules, rehearsals, last-minute changes, and all the usual moving pieces that make live theater exciting and occasionally make directors question every life choice that led them there. Now, this person had agreed to handle an important responsibility. I believed it was covered. Then, shortly before we needed it, I discovered it had not been done. There had been no warning, no conversation, no opportunity to make another plan. Now, the immediate problem would be fixed, although not easily. What stayed with me was the feeling that my trust had been taken for granted. I was angry. I replayed the situation in my mind. I imagined what I should have said. I revised the imaginary speech several times, and I must tell you, every version was extremely persuasive. Eventually, we talked. The person apologized and explained that they had become overwhelmed. They had avoided telling me because they were embarrassed and kept believing they could solve the problem before anyone noticed. I understood the explanation. I'd been there. But understanding it did not instantly remove the hurt. For a while, whenever I thought about working with that person again, I felt the old frustration return. Part of me believed that forgiving them meant acting as though nothing had happened. But nothing had not happened. Trust had been damaged. That was when I began to understand that forgiveness and trust are not the same decision. I could release the desire to punish this person forever while still acknowledging that trust would need to be rebuilt. I could accept the apology without immediately returning everything to the way it had been. I could forgive and create a clearer boundary. The next time we worked together, responsibilities were written down. We scheduled check-ins. We created an earlier deadline so there was time to respond if something went wrong. That was not revenge. It was wisdom. Forgiveness allowed the relationship to move forward. The boundary helped us move forward differently. Now, what forgiveness is and what it isn't is a thing. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It does not mean that what happened was acceptable. It does not mean forgetting, excusing harmful behavior, or pretending you were not hurt. It does not automatically restore trust, and it does not always lead to reconciliation. Reconciliation requires honesty, accountability, changed behavior, and an effort from both people. Forgiveness can begin with one person, even if the other person never apologizes, never understands the harm they caused, or is no longer part of your life. Forgiveness means deciding that resentment will not be given unlimited control over your future. It is not saying the backpack was never heavy. It's saying, I don't want to carry all this forever. You may not be ready to empty the entire backpack today, and that's okay. Forgiveness is often a process, not a performance. Sometimes we release part of the hurt and discover that another part remains. Sometimes we believe we have forgiven someone until a memory, a place, a smell, a surprisingly specific song brings the pain rushing all back again. That does not mean we failed. It means healing is still happening. Now, forgiveness does not require you to give someone unlimited access to your life. Compassion and boundaries can exist together. You can say, I forgive you, but trust will need to be rebuilt. You can also say, I understand that you were struggling, but the way you treated me was not acceptable. You can wish someone healing while choosing distance. You can release resentment without returning to an unsafe or harmful relationship. A boundary is not a punishment. It is a clear statement about what is needed for a relationship to remain healthy. Forgiveness asks, what am I ready to release? And a boundary asks, what needs to change? Both questions matter. Sometimes the person we have the greatest difficulty forgiving is ourselves. We replay the careless words, the poor decisions, the person we disappointed, or the moment when we knew better but did not do better. Healthy guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am the mistake. Those are not the same thing. Self-forgiveness does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means admitting what happened, apologizing when an apology is appropriate, and repairing what you can, learning from the experience and allowing yourself to grow. You are responsible for your actions. You are not required to turn your worst action into your permanent identity. We should not define our entire humanity on a single mistake, or even 2 or 3. The person you were in one difficult moment does not have to be the person you remain. So how do we begin forgiving when the hurt still feels heavy? Let's start with 3 small steps. First, name what happened. In fact, this is a good time to get your journal out and write it down. What hurt most? Was it the action, the broken trust, embarrassment, the rejection, or the feeling that you didn't matter? Second, decide what boundary or repair is needed. Do you need an apology, a conversation or more time, greater distance, a clear change in behavior? Third, identify one thing you may be ready to release. Not everything, just one thing. Maybe you're ready to stop rehearsing the argument every night. Maybe you're ready to stop checking whether the other person is suffering enough. Maybe you're ready to replace I should have known better with now I know what I will do differently. A small release is still a beginning. Now it's time to open the Kindness Gradebook. Now remember, this is not about judging yourself or collecting another reason to feel guilty. The Kindness Gradebook helps us honestly recognize where we are and choose one small way to grow. Now think about one hurt or disappointment or mistake you have been carrying. Now give your response a letter grade from F to A+. F, you added more hurt. You retaliated, tried to embarrass the other person, repeatedly brought up the mistake, or allowed the resentment to harm other people. An F does not mean you are a failure. It means your response added more weight to the situation, and this is where growth needs to begin. D, remained controlled by the resentment. You did not intentionally cause more harm, but you continued replaying the event, wishing for revenge, or allowing the hurt to shape unrelated choices and relationships. A C, avoiding making the situation worse. Now you controlled your outward reaction, but you have not yet honestly addressed the hurt, identified a needed boundary, or considered what you may be ready to release. A B, took one healthy step toward forgiveness. You acknowledged the hurt, resisted retaliation, wrote about your feelings, had an honest conversation, or established a reasonable boundary. The burden may still be there, but you have begun deciding how you would carry it. And A, you chose forgiveness with honesty and healthy boundaries. You released some resentment without denying what happened. You kept the lesson, protected your well-being, and stopped allowing the pain to control every future interaction. And A+, helped forgiveness create a ripple. Our A+s in the kindness effect usually have some kind of leadership quality to them. You practiced forgiveness in your own life and then helped someone else understand that forgiveness can include accountability, wisdom, self-respect, and compassion. Perhaps you modeled a meaningful apology, interrupted a cycle of retaliation, or helped another person choose healing without surrendering a necessary boundary. Now choose the grade that most honestly describes where you are today. Do not choose the grade you think you should have. Choose the grade that reflects your actual response. Then ask yourself, what would help me raise this by 1 letter grade? Not from an F to an A+ overnight. Just 1 grade. 1 honest journal entry, 1 sincere apology, 1 healthier boundary, 1 small part of the burden you're willing to set down. That is progress. All right, so what's next? Before we close, let's turn reflection into 1 small, specific act. It's time to get the journal out. You might want to write down your answers here. Writing can help separate what happened, what you learned, and what you no longer need to carry. So here's your 3 what's next questions. Number 1, what hurt, regret, or disappointment am I still carrying? Take a minute, write that down. Number 2, what lesson or boundary do I need to keep? And what one part of the resentment may I be ready to release? Take a second, hit the pause button, and write that down. What specific action will I take within the next 24 hours? You could write an unsent letter, offer a sincere apology, accept an apology, establish a boundary, or speak to yourself with greater compassion. Keep the actions small. You do not have to complete the entire journal today. You only need to take one honest step. Forgiving does not change the past. It changes the amount of power the past is allowed to have over the future. We can remember what happened without remaining trapped inside the memory. We can carry the wisdom without carrying all the pain. We can offer grace without surrendering our boundaries. And when we make mistakes, we can take responsibility without deciding that we are beyond growth. One honest reflection, one healthy boundary, one small release. That is how a kindness grade improves, and that is how a ripple begins. I'm Jim Ellis, and this has been The Kindness Effect. If this episode helped you, please follow The Kindness Effect, like the episode, and share it with someone who may be carrying a burden of their own. Your support helps these messages reach more adults and teens and helps create the next ripple of kindness. Remember this, forgiveness does not erase the past. It allows you to carry the lesson without carrying the weight forever. Until next time, be kind to others and be kind to yourself, and keep creating the kindness effect.